Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished entrepreneur who's been highly recognized, Ajay Chaturvedi. Ajay, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Glad to be
Ajay,
here.
thank you. Ajay is the founder of HarVa XPO, the first all-women BPO in rural India. He's a World Economic Forum recognized young global leader. He's a CNN IBN youth icon. He's a youth Indian leader of 2011. And he's an author. And a lot of you know I'm very partial to authors. He's an author of a book titled Lost Wisdom of the Swastika. So Ajay, let's start talking about HarVa XPO. I hope I've got the pronunciation right.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a huge meaning behind it, which I'm glad very few people recognize, but I'm glad you did.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about this venture and what does HarVa mean?
So HarVa, I've been, first of all, I think you and I kind of are on the same plane because, we've had similar backgrounds. Critical thinking comes naturally to us, right? So thinking about things and problem solving is really what gives us the high, right? Most of us are really about problem solving. It's not really about, what the outcome is. It's about, being able to solve that critical problem. So for me, the real issue was, in my previous avatar, when I was with the bank, as a banker, when I traveled across, I realized a lot of things, a lot of loops, a lot of loopholes, and a lot of things that are not visible to a normal person's eye. And that's what I started seeing. The real opportunity in India was actually being able to tap it as a producer's economy rather than as a consumer's market. Right? That was the foundation of it. But you can't tap the value unless first you start to create it or recognize it. Right. So the genesis of the name is harnessing value of rural India.
Okay.
Right. And you can't harness value without you first creating it, or at least, identifying it. I mean, you can have a mine of gold, but what good is it if you're not able to mine it? Right. So that's the genesis of the name. The reason XPO is because the initial thought, and while it's been 10 years since, and this will get eventually acted out, the XPO really evolves from the whole idea of X process outsourcing. Okay. Anything can be outsourced there, right? Because this is from a economic scale. You'd probably find from a conventional sort of a measurement stick, rural India would probably be at the lowest, right? It does not go beyond this, right? So rural areas of Africa and everything. But when you talk about being able to create value, rural India is the bottom, right? Then, of course, there's other ones like rural Africa, rural Thailand, whatever. But we're not even considering those, right? From a basic understanding of where value can start getting created, it's this. Right. So that's the genesis of the name, and that's the foundation.
Okay. And, you said you were a banker in your earlier avatar. What made you move out of the banking world into not just your becoming an entrepreneur, but into rural India?
Right. See, the 2008 real estate crisis was something that is glaring in front of all of us, right? When you look at this, and, it's been just a decade. Like when I say just a decade, it's like the scam that sort of erupted with Ramalinga Raju, that was about 7,000 crores. And at that time, that was a humongous figure for us. Absolutely. Right? Then came out CWG and all kinds of other scams, and they were just in orders of magnitude that just kept rising. But what really intrigued me at that time was anybody who told you that they did not know from within the bank that this was coming was either fooling you or they were completely unaware. Right. And once that started becoming apparent, then it just sort of started to make a huge room in my head that, this is not the right way. It cannot be, you cannot be going in the same direction when you know that, it's polluting it. It's almost like the meat industry, is the biggest contributor to, global warming and climate change. If you still keep eating meat despite that, I mean, there's something dead within you. Ever since I've got to know after research that one jeans takes about 2,000 gallons of water to get processed. An average human does not urinate more than half a liter of urine in a day. Then you start to put these things together, and you can't then talk about circular economy or giving back to the society if you still keep doing these things and, close your, right? Once I begun to understand that, rural India was the one place where I actually, so, when I was in the US, I actually ended up buying a couple of farms, in Uttarakhand and Haryana and Rajasthan and places. And after I traveled there, there's a lot of things that started becoming apparent to me, which was not otherwise visible from a media perspective or studies perspective. Things that you start to see and witness, and you're like, just, it just completely, sort of a eureka moment for you. Right? And I'll narrate a couple of incidences, and you'll probably understand that better.
Very
So
interesting.
that's what made me change, right? I mean, after a point in life, money is not really that important, right? I mean, if somebody asks me, what's your objective in life? I mean, becoming the richest person in life is it's actually too shallow. I mean, okay, Jeff Bezos is the richest person in in the world today. What's he done, right? He went to the space for 11 minutes. His girlfriend is chasing Leonardo DiCaprio. And I'm sorry for saying this, but I find it hilarious, right? You're divorced. Bill Gates is divorced. So, okay, what is your definition of happiness, right?
Correct.
And so I'm just using the names as incidental sort of names.
I fully understand,
really,
and I
right?
agree with what you're saying.
Right?
I agree with that, and I fully agree with what you've just said. That, and I've said this for many years, that one more zero to your net worth is not going to change your life at all.
Absolutely, right?
Well
if
said.
You're not able to enjoy the love of your family, your wife, your loved ones, your kids, you're not able to enjoy a peaceful night dinner and sleep. I mean, I don't know what.
Well said.
Well
said. So. But coming back to HarVa XPO, why did you decide to focus only on women?
So this is an interesting question I get asked a lot of times. That's not what I started out with. As the name reflects, it's harnessing value of rural India. Even harnessing values is really about harnessing value, because in my head, right, what always makes sense is there value that you can tap without really affecting the whole system, right? And as you probably would read, Kautilya Fellowship Network is like the next venture that I'm working on, and there's a subject that has been taken out from a book, which is called Kulhad economy. Now, what is Kulhad economy? Kulhad economy is essentially, it makes something from the soil, right? The potter makes the cup or the kulhad, and then that is augmented by the tea seller, which is sold back to the buyer, who consumes it and puts it back. Economic value is generated with zero sort of emissions, zero wastage and whatnot, right? That is the the uber, the orgasmic state of economy in my head, right? Correct. When I start to really think about it. So when coming to rural India, what we realized is that, of course, the next step after the regular BPO industry, the boom that India had seen in the 90s and early 2000s of the BPO, the biggest next step would be go to rural India. And when we started to, and this is the incident that essentially was the eureka moment for me for that, we went and presented in a Khap village, Jat village Khap panchayats in Haryana, right? Because I basically I landed from the US into Gurgaon, right? I didn't come to Dehradun, I landed in Gurgaon, ended up buying a farm on Sona Road. And one of the villages that was, incidentally, there was no Google Maps that was functioning at that time. There were no telephone networks, right? So you could go to Badshahpur and there'd be no telephone network, right? Mobile phones was still not a reality as it is today, right? So the reality I'm talking about 2008 was completely different from what it is today. We went there and presented to a group of people, about 300-400 people group, like in a village. And, there were a couple of my colleagues, and we, had this computer that we were carrying around, because laptop was not possible at that time. So we were carrying this computer around, and we gave a presentation. We essentially told them what BPO was, what labor arbitrage was, in so much in Hindi and everything. And at the end of this presentation, we said, okay, now there will be a test. Suddenly a hand goes up, and I say, this woman says, she had a question. Like, I'm really surprised, because I was hoping there'd be all these youth who would be coming up to ask questions. She said, I'll use this Hindi, right? Sir, मुझे आपके साथ काम करना है. I said, ठीक है, आपका नाम क्या है? कहती है Anita. And she says, I've completely understood what you're saying. I said, I'm really thrilled, although I was not expecting somebody of your profile, because, while looking at her, you could make out she's about 35, 36. She probably does not, she's probably got a family and kids and whatnot. And I asked her, have you, what have you studied till? And she says, I've completed 8th standard. I said, wow, that's, really brave. We were hoping for college graduates and youth and, girls and guys to come up. But, I'm glad that you've come up. Have you worked on a computer? She says, I've never worked on a computer. I was, really confused. I said, how can you be so confident that you want to work with me, with us, what we're trying to do? When you haven't even worked on a computer, you've studied till 8th grade. she says, yeah, but I understood, and she's essentially explained to me in Hindi what labor arbitrage was. आप महंगा बेचोगे, सस्ता खरीदोगे और जितना पैसा बनेगा उससे हमें salary दोगे. She essentially explained to me.
Amazing.
I said, fantastic, right? So I said, great, you please give the test, and if you qualify, we'll consider you. And she says, I said, there'll be about 2 and 3 hours of tests, and we'll go out. So we are on our way out, and she stops me. She says, sir, मुझे आपसे कुछ पूछना है. I said, what? And she says, in school, we were taught A, B, C, D. But this thing that you have in front of you, it says QWERTYUIOP. Why is that? I'm a computer science engineer from one of the most reputed colleges in the country. I had no idea, right? I'm like stumped. I mean, I know, of course, all of us have done research, but that's not the first thing intuitively that comes to you, right? I said, okay, great. You've got me stumped. Please, spend time on this computer for another 3-4 hours, and then you give the test, and we'll come back and we'll chat. So after about 3-4 hours, we come back, and this woman is beaming, and I'm looking at her quizzically. I'm thinking, what's with her? And she says, "मुझे आपको कुछ बताना है." I said, sure. And she gets up and she starts reciting this keyboard, QWERTYUIOPASDSDS, right? I'm completely in awe of her. I'm in shock almost, right? I'm thinking, here's a woman who's never seen a computer in her life, studied till 8th grade, can recite the keyboard in 3 hours straight. I still can't do it, right? We've taken it for granted. You can't do it, I'm sure. Right? And I'm thinking, this is fantastic, right? That was the eureka moment where I'm thinking, if this woman could recite the keyboard and memorize it, I mean, imagine, look at her capabilities, right? So that is the moment we started to think, okay, great, why don't we give her a chance without going through the actual test? Because if I were to teach somebody computers today, right, I'd start with Charles Babbage, the father of computers, ENIAC, EDIAC, Abacus, 486, 386, Intel, Microsoft, all kinds of things. They did not care, right? All this is completely gone. These women started to, so we actually went out and got about 500 women of those, 50 trained that we got. We got them to a point where all of them started to, memorize these keyboards, and they would start looking. Now, this is 2008. This is not today, right? 2008-9, right? So they would start looking at Excel, and they would memorize, right, this particular option and this particular, choice from the there. So they will not know italics. They'll know that number, right? For them, it's a tool. It's like, you're driving a Mercedes, I'm driving a Lamborghini, somebody's driving a Maruti 800. All of us get a flat. We go to the same exact puncture wala.
Correct.
He does not know aerodynamics engineering. He does not know, mechanical engineering. All he needs to do is open those 5 nuts, take out the wheel, fix the flat, put it back. Simple. That's what these women did. So, initial projects that we had were, digitization of, business cards and all kinds of things. So that basically is how we started. Now, after 5 women walked in, no man would walk in, right? And so the women, basically populated themselves. It ended up being a women-only venture, right? Then we didn't really have any youth who were, college-going youth and whatnot. To the extent that, when the Nirbhaya incident happened in 2011 or 12, somebody came to us, one of the journalists from, I think it was Times of India or wherever, and they said, what have you done for security of women? And, honestly, when you're running a rural venture, I mean, your profit margins are like razor thin, right? Because you're really thinking of scale and then, going up. I was literally at that, 5-10 seconds, I was completely numb. I'm thinking, what should I answer? This woman from behind me comes up and she says, sir, koi aankh utha kar to dekhe, uski taange tod denge. Right? This is a Jat village with Khapancha. So I'm thinking, great, So it sort of sorted itself out in a way, right? It ended up being a, all women outfit.
What an amazing, what an amazing story! Absolutely amazing story. And I sincerely hope one day you'll write about this story. It's
yeah, I do.
It is so motivating. But Ajay, moving on, you said that you spoke to the Khap Panchayats. This young 35-year-old woman came to you and said, the more it's, and I've been speaking to a lot of people who are empowering women, giving them more money. I'd love to get your perspective on how the rural communities are reacting to women getting empowered and to getting some money in their hands, which is a new thing that's happening in our country.
See, one of the things that I philosophically differ with a lot of people, I mean, at the core, I'm a capitalist,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I'm also compassionate and I'm also, sort of full of
Correct.
emotions. If
Correct.
you read about my philosophy essentially today is socio-capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's neither socialism, it's not capitalism. It's about social, unless you can get those people. See, because the more you try to control the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
the less you actually, are inputting.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you're, and that's essentially the core of, art of war. In the heat of the battle, you don't, get emotional. Same as Bhagavad Gita, karmanya vadika raste mahabaleshvara. So, that is what I'm trying to do. And that's where I started out, that if you just see, because I did not go there with the intention of women empowerment, because I genuinely feel I'm nobody to empower anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can, let's say, dig a well and water comes out of it, let it be had by people who are thirsty,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if all the women come up and they start calling it women empowerment, that's all fine, right? But the goal is to quench thirst of people,
Mm-hmm.
not to control how much they're having, not to
Correct.
control what they are, doing after that. Because that is where I think it gets too political, too sort of iffy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've tried to stay away from that, because that gets into this realm of activism, which
Mm-hmm.
today, I mean, after I've seen a lot of things on the ground, I've really got repulsed from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is getting twisted in a way that, I mean, the things that I know now
Mm-hmm.
that have completely revulsed me from, even venturing into that.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I think the moment you get a woman to be able to earn,
Mm-hmm.
you suddenly are making a whole village prosper,
Correct.
right? Because she invariably will always put that money. I mean, all of us know. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm 100%. My mother says something, I will do it blindly,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's almost certain that, she will always want good for you. Not that my father does not want good for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that,
Mm-hmm.
they're genuinely, just sort of
Correct.
motivated towards that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a father is like the overarching figure, but the mother is the one that is nurturing the kids. If you can sort of get that on, then that controls everything. But the moment you start saying, I'd like to control where you're spending that money, is when, even the women start to sort of, get wary, right?
Very
And I've seen, but I don't want to get into those examples specifically.
Very
But I think
interesting.
it's a phenomenal thing that is happening. A lot of the youth are, waking up to this possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was glad to read about, the Lijjat Papar lady, who got the
Mm-hmm.
uh, Padma Bhushan for
Yeah.
now. I actually wrote about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Papar Belna is truly epitomized, personified by her.
I know.
The right. So that's where it
Absolutely.
is.
Well said. Well said. So, Ajay, I'm now going to move to the next segment and talk about your
Yeah.
book, The Lost Wisdom of the Swastika.
Yeah.
Uh, First, tell me, this book's available on Amazon and all the other platforms?
It's getting republished now, because Times of India is the one that started to publish it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you complete the question, then I'll give you the whole story, the
Okay.
personal reason.
And then I wanted to ask you, what is the hypothesis, and tell me about the book.
Sure. So the more I traveled in rural India, the more I traveled in, and I've lived in the US. I've done many, many times cross country travel. So, I've gone into deep state Oklahoma and, Nebraska and Arizona and whatnot. So I'm fairly familiar with America as not just New York and friends in the city. It's really, the bubba that you haven't come across in Arkansas as well, right?
Sure.
And so the real world, like, and that's what I write about. The real growth is yet to come about. It cannot be just overlaid from thoughts and patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those thoughts and patterns is what I thought was, sort of worrying, because you're constantly being programmed into believing something which is not really proof on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't get into the whole book, but the book is essentially a philosophy book, which I had to write as a fiction, because 12 publishers refused it. They said, this is a swastika. Why don't you call it Harvard to Himalayas, Bankers Journey to Self-Discovery? Why don't you call it, a High Life, something like that, right? And I'm thinking, how can they be so apologetic when this is India? And I do get the reference of Hitler and, swastika and everything. By the way, I've been invited by a lot of the US senators to speak on this, because they've finally started realizing that it's actually important for the society to know what this is, rather than just blanketly sort of hiding it. The idea is that our societies are not bipolar societies, right? That's a simplification of everything. Everything is not left and right and wrong and black and white and Democrats and Republicans.
Correct.
There's a lot of shades to it, right? When you understand the shades, that those shades are actually represented by the swastika at a very, very simplistic level, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not what it is, but at a very, very simplistic level, because, you said you have thousands of viewers, then, they need to be understanding this language. But when you go deeper into it, you'd start realizing that, let's say, a movie like Matrix, or a movie like Interstellar, or a movie like Star Wars are all based on this same philosophy, right? So the philosophy is really what? That there are 4 states that people exist in, minimum, right? And that there are 4 directions. You can't get 10 directions from one direction or 2 directions. You can get 10 from 4, right? Because then you start dividing. So the idea is that you also exist in 4 states: the waking state, dreaming state, sleeping state, and the 4th state. That 4th state is called Turiya. Turiya comes from the word Chaturya, which is where also my name comes from. So there are 4 Vedas, there are 4 directions, there are 4 yugas. The idea is that it's a very, very philosophical sort of understanding, and then that trickles down into something, which you're experiencing in the society today, right? Our economy, if you start looking at the world economy, we are really not even tapping about 10% of the economy. So, while we are having this debate of sustainability and everything, the sustainability debate is happening because, you essentially have mango trees in your backyard, and you're actively selling apple jam. And then you're constantly hammering the labor for not producing enough, right? That's essentially what's happening, right? So for me, it is important for people to understand, look, you're far more than this. The economic throughput will come when you really start to sell what you're really growing, not what is being asked for. And that's where people sort of fundamentally miss out, right? So when you start looking at Indian economy, you start looking at the time scales. There are a lot of things that people think are beliefs and mythical things. Like, Tuesday people don't get a haircut. There's a mathematical reason for it. People don't understand it, right? Why do people go on to churches on Sundays? Why do people go to mosques on Fridays? There's mathematical reasons to it, right? I mean, I'm not one guy who'd say, well, no, this is a belief. I have 0 beliefs. So that was the intent of bringing out that book in a simple story format. The outcome of that now is that a couple of professors from London School of Economics, a very dear friend, Dr. Ashutosh Khanna, ended up, reading it. After about 4 years of our constant discussions, like, man, this makes complete sense, right? So we ended up making a course out of it, which is now AICTE approved course, which is being taught to school in universities, and that's called Kulhad Economy. Right? So it's a 3-credit course, 30 hours, and we're sort of teaching the students to start thinking. Starts with critical thinking. Don't take anything by studies have shown. Start looking at what logically makes sense, because a billion people country cannot have a livelihood crisis or employment crisis. I mean, either I'm crazy. You have a billion people, you have producers and consumers right here, right? So either you're just not thinking enough, or you're focusing your energies on something that you've been told, and that is where I think is wrong, right? But fortunately, I think for people like me, fortunately the COVID crisis happened, and a lot of these things are getting exposed now without you even taking the first step. But I hope that makes sense. Right?
No, makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And I'm certainly going to look out for your book when it is republished.
Yeah.
And since you live in Gurgaon, or whenever you're back in Gurgaon, must have a much more detailed discussion. But on that note, Ajay, I think we've run out of time now. So I really want to thank you for talking to me. Thank you for talking to me about harnessing value, HarVa XPO, and the incredible experiences that you have shared with so many people who you may have probably working with, including this 35-year-old woman who you talked about at length. Thank you for talking to me about your book. And, I think it's going to be a fascinating read whenever it comes out. But I look forward to keeping in touch, and good luck.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. Lovely talking to you.
Thank
you. Great effort again. Definitely will meet up when I'm in Gurgaon.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.